I think that the important thing to know when we talk about the disciplines we represent is it helps give people just a little bit of a clue about what we're doing, you know? And it's okay to play with these definitions and to think about how to present ourselves. It's also okay to change these disciplines over time. I'm guessing, I know my own path. Like, I can tell the story of my path. It looks very linear, as if I planned it 10, 20 years ago. But that's because you get trained to tell that story. And you get habituated to tell that. But in my experience, most of the scholars, most of the people I know who've made it through a PhD program and a postdoc and are now on faculty have taken a very windy path. And that's, I think, more normative than not. Does that sound about right, faculty? Yeah. And that's okay. And I know sometimes at this level we feel like, well, I said I'm biology. That means I'm always biology. I can never deviate. And I want to discourage you from that thinking. And you have amazing people around the room to mentor and guide you, to talk about that and check in with. And part of the purpose of this program is not just to support you, but to open up doors of opportunity for you so you can see all the different things. And you heard a lot of people introduce themselves. We've got sociologists, biologists, public health people, epidemiologists, people from social work, nutritionists. I could go on. Seek out these people. Do informational interviews. Learn about what they do. See how it intersects with your interests. Be open-minded to what's out there, okay? And one of the things that we're going to do to really help you think about the opportunities and the pathways that are open to you is something that we are calling elevator pitches. You've heard a couple people refer to it. It's in the agenda. Does anyone know what an elevator pitch is? Yeah? I hope you do, Tori, because you're about to teach us. So not counting Tori. Yeah, have people had experience creating them before? So Tori's about to do a fantastic job involving some fruit and maybe some juggling of introducing you to elevator pitches. No juggling? No juggling? Okay, Tori. Okay, swallowing the oranges whole. I want to say this is, of all the things we did last year, I think the elevator pitches were the, at least by the scholars and the faculty that were in attendance, it was one of the most favorite things that people did. It was one of the most talked about. And the feedback I've gotten from scholars over the years, it was one of the most useful things for them moving forward throughout this past year now. And Tori's going to talk a lot about it. The one thing I want to say is, and I'm sure Tori will say this too, you are not married to your elevator pitch. This is just your first chance to think about who you are and how you want to present yourself. Just go for it for the next 5 days. You can change it at any point. You can change it the day that you're giving it. People do. And I have about, in all seriousness, I probably have about 5 different variations of my own elevator pitch, and it changes over time. One of the scholars, one of the great questions you asked our panel is, how has your research changed over time? And you know, they didn't have a lot of time to answer that, but I can tell you everyone's research changes over time because everyone's identity changes over time, and we ask different questions and we have different experiences, and that is okay, and we want to encourage it. So please don't feel bound by your ideas, you know, feel like they're just launching pads to new ideas. So with that, we're a bit ahead of schedule, but I'm going to go ahead and bring Tori up, and we'll jump into the elevator pitch presentation and start thinking ahead. If you didn't already see it on the schedule, on Friday, each and every one of you is going to come up to this podium and give a brief elevator pitch. And that will be the culminating experience of this week. Well, I guess the dinner we have that night's the culminating experience. But you will have a chance to do exactly what many of us are doing, and we're so excited to hear them. So with that, the fantastic Tori Blackwell.
Thank you. Portable. Okay. This one sounds like it's working. Hi, I am Tori Blackwell. I introduced myself a little bit earlier. So we're going to be talking about elevator pitches. As Don mentioned, some of the things that go into the elevator pitch you've probably been hearing just in this first day. The 2 words that had occurred to me that might be a better starting point are how and why. So many, many years ago, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, when after my wife and I had our first child, I was driving on the highway and listening to an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Woohoo! And I had this little, like, 8-month-old who was doing all sorts of crazy things. He was rolling things out into the carpet. He was dumping containers of water and containers of milk. He was flinging food across the table at us and at other people. And I kept thinking to myself, this is horrible. I need to stop him from doing these things. So as I'm listening to this interview, Dr. Tyson is explaining how his daughter would take water and she would pour it out on the table. And he would go, that's an experiment. You know what she's doing? She's trying to figure out what this water does. First, she's asking the question, what is this thing in front of me? And she figures out it's a cup. Then the next question is, what's in this cup? Oh, it's water. And then she would pour the water out, and you could see that she would take her finger and she would play with it, and she would watch how the water would go around and make little balls, and the balls would come back together. She would do all these things with water. She was asking questions and being curious. So when you're a parent and the kid pours the water out, you should let them ask those why and how questions and be curious. Maintain that curiosity. And I said, Neil, you are crazy because you didn't have to clean any of that up. So over time, I developed a nice little balance between me and now my 2 children and all the crazy experiments that they ask and try to do, freezing things in our freezer. There's never a day that I open up the freezer and something new does not surprise me. But that's good because they're asking how, why, and being curious. So the first activity that I want to do involves you thinking about those 2 questions of how and why, and it involves something very similar or very basic, an orange. In fact, these are little clementines. And you can ask all sorts of questions about these oranges if you really want to, and I think you guys can. So what I want to do is I kind of want to get those creative juices flowing, asking, thinking about questions, and then from that we will look at the elevator pitches. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to bring an orange to each table and give it to someone and let them think about, or let them give me the question that they would ask about this orange. So take a moment to think about what you might ask about this orange. I'm going to walk around and hand out oranges. And as I'm walking, I will share with you maybe a question that I might ask an orange. So you have the orange when I come back. So something that I might ask an orange, or ask about an orange, a question I might want to answer about an orange is, what makes this orange at the genetic level different from any other fruit? I would really love to know what makes this orange different. Let's try to listen to some of the questions that people came up with. So oranges over here. Who has oranges?
How did the clementine and orange that we know today evolve over time?
Okay. And guess what? Because you get to answer the question, you can keep that orange. It's in its own little package. You don't have to worry about it being dirty.
Why is it naturally encased in its own little shell?
Okay. All right.
Were you genetically modified?
Okay. That's a hot button one.
Why is an orange orange?
It's a great question. Why is an orange orange?
How is the size different with a clementine than regular big oranges?
Okay, we've got our clementines, we've got our navels.
Why does it form individual slices?
Okay. All right. I'll come over there now. Do you need a moment? Okay, I'll give you a moment. Okay. Who has the orange?
What is the ratio of the juice or liquid to the solid parts of the clementine?
Right over there, right over there. Are we ready?
Sure. Why is the peel bitter than the inside?
We have 2 over here.
Do you have sugar in you? Sugar.
Oh, okay.
Why are these easier to peel than other oranges?
Because I have a 7-year-old, that's why.
Why is the peel on mine rough and hers is smooth?
Okay. Uh-oh.
I don't. I'm still thinking. Hold on.
Okay, I'll come back. We'll go over here.
Does the color have anything to do with the healing properties or chemical makeup?
Okay.
How do different people experience taste? And if there was a scale of how they would rate it, how would it vary amongst different cultures and different people?
Okay. I was wondering when we would get some questions related to culture and those types of components of this orange.
Why can't we eat the seeds of an orange?
Oh,
How do you handle the pressures of being two things, both a fruit and a color?
okay. All right. Have I not been back here?
Hello? Okay. Which part of the orange contains more minerals?
Contains more what? Minerals, okay. Which part contains more minerals, okay?
Why can't I eat the orange now?
The question of the day. I don't think I've gotten this table. So who has the orange? Who's our question asker?
Where did you originally come from? Like, where did it grow originally?
We just had a researcher here working at CSAs. That would be a great question for that person, right? And then our faculty to wrap things up.
How many people had jobs because of this orange?
That's a great question, right? Did I miss any tables? Did everyone get their orange questions? Oh, okay.
Has the orange always had a peel, or has it come about evolutionary over time to make itself less appealing?
Since there are no words that rhyme with orange in English, are there words that rhyme with orange in other languages?
Okay. All right. And again, you get to keep your orange. And to answer the question, when can you eat the orange? I suppose now. I don't. There's nothing preventing you. So, what's interesting about that activity is, one, like just from passing out the oranges, you can hear how much thought people are putting into the types of questions that you can ask this orange. If you listen to those questions, you will hear some of those questions were actually kind of similar. There were 3 or 4 people that wanted to know about properties of the orange peel, whether it was nutritional value, whether it was color, whether it was... So what is this elevator pitch? You can see people are already breaking out their notebooks. All right, an elevator pitch is essentially about a 1-minute presentation about what your research interests are and what you're currently working on. We call it an elevator pitch because you can imagine an elevator ride. You come up to the elevator door, you push the button, you wait 10 or 15 seconds, you get on the elevator, push the button, you wait 20 or 30 seconds to get to the next floor, the doors open up, you walk out, there's usually another 5 or 10 seconds there, and then the 2 parties make their way to separate locations. It's about a 1-minute process. Now, there are 2 ways you could ride the elevator. You could ride the elevator like this. It's very uncomfortable, especially if you're at a scientific convention of some sort and you're trying to do some networking. It's very uncomfortable. Or you can ride the elevator with, oh, hi, yeah, my name's Tori Blackwell, I do blah, 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 and here's a little bit of spiel about what I do, what do you do? So it actually gives you a nice way to interact with another person while you're in a lot of different social events. I like to think of it as it is a way to prevent science wallflowers. Right, you now have your icebreaker ready. Again, as far as ways to share it, a lot of times it's going to be informal. A lot of times it'll just be you're at a convention, you're visiting someone else's lab, you run into somebody while you're having coffee, and they say, hey, what do you do? And this is kind of your response to that question. Let's see, what else can we think about? We're going to use them often today while we're interacting with other scholars. But like I said, you'll use these elevator pitches all the time. So the elevator pitches are handy because if I just tell you my name, you may or may not remember that. If I tell you my name and maybe where I'm from, you might remember a little bit more. Maybe you'll make some connection, maybe you won't make some connection. If I tell you my name and then tell you a little bit about my research and why I like my research and why I'm enthusiastic about my research and where I think my research is going, you might pick up on my name, you might pick up on my enthusiasm, you might pick up on my project, you might start making connections with your project to my project. There are a lot of other things that might happen that kind of solidify that interaction and makes it more memorable. It also allows other people to kind of get a feel for where you are relative to where they are. Right? When I was a graduate student, if I went someplace and I ran into someone who was a yeast worker, then I could much better relate to what they were working on because I was also a yeast worker. If I was working with somebody and they weren't yeast, but they were working on similar proteins, and I could go, oh, okay, so organisms are different, but the proteins are the same. Okay, maybe we're not looking at the same proteins, but we're looking at the same types of pathways. Okay, proteins aren't the same, but pathways are the same. Okay, maybe we're not looking at anything that's totally similar, but they're also molecular biology people. Okay, I can kind of understand where I should be putting this conversation, and it kind of determine what type of relationship I'm able to build with that person. And again, as far as opening those doors to other opportunities and conversations, the number of times that after the meeting, someone sits down next to somebody else, gives their elevator pitch, the other person gives their elevator pitch, and they say, hey, you ever thought about doing this project? And the other person goes, yeah, but I've never been able to find somebody else that was interested in it because I've got all the people, but I don't have any of the equipment. The other person goes, well, I got all the equipment, I don't have any of the people. Right? So, bam, you've got a collaboration. Right? So a lot of that, like I said, comes through that mentoring. And one of the points of this program is to give you guys a base of people. So maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you might remember some of the individuals in the room and be able to go, hey, remember when you gave that elevator pitch, were you still working on that? Are you still thinking about that? Hey, I'm kind of working on this. Is there any kind of collaboration we can get set up? So they're very handy. All right, what is included in an elevator pitch? Now, I think I have one student. Do you want to come on up? Who's going to give us an example of an elevator pitch? This is from our previous cohort, so you can kind of get a feel for what one sounds like. I have very good, high levels of confidence.
All right, this is the first time I'll be doing this, so bear with me. All right. Hi, I'm Ashley Widmer, and I'm involved in cancer immunotherapy research. One of the issues with cancer treatments, such as chemotherapy, is that while they do effectively kill cancer, is that they also attack other rapidly dividing cells. This leads to unwanted side effects and further injury of patients. In order to avoid this issue altogether, we're developing a more elegant approach in treating cancer using liposomal nanoparticles. These nanoparticles have an immune cell-specific targeting system that allows for the restoration of the natural immune response in the body. By reactivating the immune system, we are able to effectively kill cancer without the unwanted side effects. This is the future of cancer research.
Yes. Yes.
That was amazing.
Yes.
But I know that she didn't feel like that last year. I want people to see that, you know.
Yeah, so last year I did my elevator pitch on diabetes, but I'm actually in an RLC that does cancer immunotherapy, so obviously I would choose that. You'll hear more about it on Wednesday. I'll be presenting a full presentation on that day, but definitely last year I'm not a very good public speaker, or at least I don't like to think that I am, but everybody tells me that I'm quite good at it. But but definitely it's normal if you guys feel really afraid of developing an elevator pitch. It's not difficult, but finding something that you're really passionate about and what you can easily talk about and talk to is really important. And I think that when you choose your elevator pitches to present on Friday, definitely pick something that you'd be interested in actually doing in your RLCs.
Thank you, Ashley. So, a few things that like I said, like she said, like you've heard probably 2 or 3 times now. You are not required to take your elevator pitch and make this the next 5 years of your life, right? This is more of a tool that we're going to learn how to use that really is just, it's probably for most people are going to be their first time putting together an elevator pitch. You're going to get better at it. You're going to be great at it. So the first time it's going to feel really uncomfortable. It's going to be like riding a bike. Everybody probably knows how to ride a bike, or at least a lot of you probably know how to ride a bike. And you just forget that the first time you kind of fell over and it hurt a little bit, but you got back up. So it's okay if it feels a little wobbly and shaky at times, because eventually you'll be able to master this skill. You'll be great at it. I won't lie to you, I was probably a third-year graduate student before I even realized I needed to have this skill. I kept wondering to myself, why is it that people just wander away from me when we have these parties and I tell them what I do? It's because I told it in a very boring way that took about 25 minutes. So you wander away from that. 1 minute is workable. All right? Now, in her, probably I think that might have been about 45-second speech, she essentially hit all of these 4 items, right? Her topic, she led right with that topic. The problem that she's trying to address, that was essentially what, maybe her second or third sentence was the problem that she was trying to address. And then, why is that problem interesting and important? And I think that becomes really critical, because questions are great. I mean, you guys were asking lots of questions about those oranges. Questions are great. The next question becomes, so what? Right? Why should anybody care about your question? And that's really one of the key things that you want to hit as part of your elevator pitch. One, it gives you a chance to get your enthusiasm out there, because when you're probably talking about why you should care about my project, if you tell me why you care and it's like, you should care about this because it's really great, then the person on the other side is going to go, they don't think that's really great. But if you tell me that it's really great and you're engaged in your project, then I'm going to go, wow, that's a really great project. That's energy. That's the kind of thing that people pick up on. The other reason is if that other person is a collaborator and they're thinking about working with you, they do want to know, what the big end game is. What's the point of your question, right? So you always want to be cognizant of that, so what, right? It also comes in handy because doing research costs money. And you got to be able to answer that so what for all those people that are going to want to give you guys money. Because when we're done, people are going to want to give you guys money, right? We're training you to be hopefully successful researchers, and that's a component of that. So you're going to be able to answer that so what, because you're going to have to answer it in lots of places. And then where does your work fit, right? Big picture. How does your work fit within psychology? How does your work fit within some subsection of psychology? How does your work fit in science, right? All of that, if you can get that into your elevator pitch, that's great. All right, so here's a little bit more as far as how you put your pitch together. And again, these are your 3 key items. What is your topic? And again, we're going to do our final pitches on Friday. If you have a topic and you feel comfortable with it, you've already come into the room with great things that you want to accomplish, that's great. You have a topic. But we understand, we know some people are still working on that, right? Still trying to figure out exactly what that sweet spot in research is for them. So try to pick something that you feel comfortable with, something that you think you can kind of engage with and think about between now and Friday. But again, just know that it's okay to change your mind and pick something else at a later date, or on Tuesday, or on Thursday, right? That's okay. Again, make sure that you're making it clear what that problem is. What is the question you're trying to ask, right? So that the person you're talking with gets a feel for that. And then the better feel they have for the question you're asking, the better the feedback you can get from that person. both when you're using your elevator pitch, you know, in a live situation, and as we're helping you develop your elevator pitches. And always think about that so what? What's the point? What's the big picture? Why do we need to be asking this question and answering this question? This last slide kind of gets to that thing that we've been talking about how these pitches are not constant. These things are plastic, and they can vary and change over time for a lot of different reasons. For one, science always advances, right? You guys could have your perfect pitch right now, and you could do the research, and maybe you have some great experimental data, and you get your question answered in 2 years. Woohoo! Yes! You're going to have another question. That's just how research works. What usually happens is you answer that first question, and while you're answering it, you figure out there's 1, 2, 10, 25 other questions that you can continue asking. So you push it. I like to kind of think of it as you're slowly rolling a rock up a never-ending hill, because there's always more questions to ask. And when the hill gets too high, you're probably old, so you just pass the rock off to the next young kid. They can keep rolling it up the hill for you. It never ceases. The other thing is the pitch can vary based on the audience. So when I was a graduate student, I spent a lot of time working on yeast. So if I was in my graduate school lab or at some yeast convention, my elevator pitch would start off with, we look at S-Cerevisiae to understand the mating phenotype. We understand that there's a MAT-A type and a MAT-alpha type. Under the right conditions, the MAT-A and the MAT-alpha can find each other using a pheromone signaling mechanism. They have a gradient of pheromone that they use in order to guide towards each other. And once they have oriented themselves properly, they will start to grow towards each other. They will form a shmoo in that budding growth process, attach to each other, form buds, and generate new offspring. In order to look at that, we look at a bunch of MAP kinase signaling pathways, and it's like another 30 seconds of great chemistry. When I was in a less formal setting, say if I'm at a bar with some people that don't necessarily do a lot of yeast research, I might say, I watch yeast have sex under the microscope. It turns out that yeast don't have mouths or eyes or ears, so they don't know where each other's at. But they put little things out into the solution so they can find each other, and they will grow towards where their friend is putting stuff out at. And guess what? We care because that's the same way that your axons figure out how to get to the end of your finger, and it's also the same way that your vascular system forms. So that's why we care. And if I was working with little kids, then I would say, guess what? You know those things that your mom uses to make bread? They're these little tiny dots, and I watch how they talk to each other. Right? So it changes based on the audience. And what you will figure out is, just like Dawn kind of indicated, your pitch will probably change, or your pitch will at some point become supernatural. So she was talking about how she kind of had like 5 different pitches. And because she's kind of been working on pitches, understands how the pitches work, it becomes a very fluid thing. You walk into a room, you can judge the audience, you can figure out, okay, this is the version of the pitch that I need at this moment, and you give that pitch. You walk into another audience, you change the pitch. You get some new data, you change the pitch, because now you've pushed your research forward. You might not be given that same spiel. I know if I went back to my graduate school lab that I left 10 years ago, my pitch would probably not be what they're currently doing because they've learned more. So now they don't focus so much on how it finds the right partner. They're probably focusing on, I think now they're focusing on binding proteins that are out on the cytoplasm to figure out how they get connected to each other so that they can do all the other wonderful things that they're doing. Right? So it changes, and as you get better at forming that pitch, you'll be very, very good at making those modifications on the fly. You'll have 5 pitches, you might have 10 pitches, you might have 20 pitches. You may get to the point where, like in the Matrix, there is no spoon, there is no pitch. It's just you. Because your pitch is so much a part of what you do on a day-to-day basis that all you're really doing is you're just concisely and succinctly telling somebody what you've been doing for 15 years of your life. Right? Now, we don't have 15 years. The funding will have run out on dinner. So instead, we've got about 5 days, and I think, since the audio is not working, I would show you some example pitches, but I think that we're going to see people wiggling instead of dancing. But what I would encourage you to do is you can do a Google search. If you do a Google search for Build Exito, if you do a Google search for Build Exito and elevator pitches, you will get our link from last year's elevator pitches. So you can watch, I think it's about an hour of elevator pitches from our previous scholars, including our scholar in the back room, including Sean. I think his pitch is at about minute 9 or something. I guess if you're really good with funky letters and numbers, you could write that down. But I guarantee you, if you do a Google search of Build Exito elevator pitches, this is like the second link. It's very high. So you can see some examples. What else do I want to mention? Yes. You should. I know there's no microphone over there, and we don't have any over here.
Thank you. Sorry to jump in, but it just, as you were talking, it reminded me, in addition to what you'll see on the elevator pitches, are you, me, and Adam, remember, giving feedback after every 5 or 10, was it, pitches? 4 or 5? We won't do that this year because we have 3 times as many people. But what I want to say is this is something that so many scholars mentioned to me last year. And Ashley, I don't know if you've experienced this also, but you would have your pitch ready, and then you would hear someone, you would think, oh, I wish I said that. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Did you have that? Yeah. They got better and better, right? Absolutely. So in the hour or two that you hear people giving their pitches, you're revising, and you can see the progression. And I don't want to say got better. They're all great. I guess I would say got more focused, got more pointed, got more passionate is what you would see. So I take that as like an analogy of what happens in our careers. So what happens for you in that hour or two on Friday when you hear people go around, that's been happening for us on faculty for 10, 20, 30 years. Sitting in rooms and seeing how people react and going to symposiums and presentations and learning like how to present yourself, what gets people excited. And I think Tori put it so well. A lot of this really does come down to, you know, how does research, how do we get research done? What is the business of research? It's about getting grants, by and large. That's how we get to do the work we do. And the way that we get grants is by telling a very compelling story and making our story sound more compelling than any of our competitors. Part of it is building up our own skill set and showing that we can do the work. But part of it too is, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have the same skill set. So the way that you differentiate is by telling the story in a way that's compelling and gets funders to get very excited. And the funder you'll hear the most about this week is the National Institutes of Health, or NIH. And that's because they're funding this amazing project. And I wanted to say, I don't know if you've seen it on the agenda or if somehow it's become clear, the NIH is coincidentally, I think it's a coincidence, going to be here on Wednesday, our site visitors, as they're called. So I think it really did, it's coincidental, right, Kay? They didn't plan it from the get-go, but... Yeah, and so what's happening is they're coming during orientation. So the people that give us, I shouldn't say give us, the funding that we earned, they're coming to take a look. And I don't think it's too much to overstate, sort of evaluate and assess how things are going. So they will be here. They'll be observing you. They'll be observing us. I should say, no, they'll be observing us. They'll be enjoying you, observing us. And I think it's a perfect example, and I bring it up now just to say, part of what we're going to be doing on Wednesday, when I say we, I mean myself, Kay, Tori, faculty, staff, is telling our story. You are part of our story, so we're presenting our story in that way to show them, hey, aren't you glad you gave us this money? Give us more. This is working really well. And so when we think about these pitches, this isn't just some academic exercise. It really is about clarifying the way we think, clarifying the work we do, and getting other people excited about it so that we can move our work forward. And I just wanted to make sure and make that connection to, you know, we're all here because we're interested in research on some level, some of us more than others, but we're also participating in research as we're all here at the same time. So there are these things happening at different levels. Thank you for letting me jump in.
No, that was good. And along those same lines, so a lot of people always worry about how to craft that elevator speech. Remember, at this stage, it's like picking out clothes from the store. Some are going to fit, some are going to not fit. You can try on lots of different things. We are not at the tailoring phase yet, so some of them might be a little baggy in a few places. But use the time. We're going to have lots of time. The breakout sessions, you'll be able to try your elevator pitches out on the faculty from your colleges. When you guys are out at dinner, you can bounce your elevator pitches off of each other, get a little feedback, see how it goes when you share it with someone else. When we've got breaks, if you're trying to think of something to do, look at the person next to you and swap your elevator pitches. So there are definitely lots of opportunities between now and Friday to kind of share those those elevator pitches and refine them as best you can over this next 5 days. And then on Friday, we will have our big celebratory event where we listen to each of your elevator pitches, which I am positive are going to be some great elevator pitches. Just from, like I said, listening to the Orange activity. I know you guys have lots and lots and lots of good ideas. So it just becomes a question of sitting down and trying to answer those 4 questions. Right? What's my topic? Why do you care? Where does it fit within the field? Like, think about those questions, and you should be able to put together pretty good elevator pitches by Friday. So with that, I think we're still running early. Yeah, we've got some time before our next break. So, in your groups, if you want to... Oh. Yes, there is a time limit. It is a hard 1 minute. A hard 1 minute. I don't want to have to break the hook out to drag you off stage or get one of the, I don't know, I'm going to have to get, what's that guy, get some of the American Idol people out here to like ring the buzzer to get you off the stage. I don't want to have to do that, right? So you're going to have a solid minute, but that's where that conciseness comes in. Because remember, you've only got an elevator ride. And it's not an elevator to the moon or to Mars. It's a very short elevator ride. So you do want to kind of work on that conciseness. So maybe you might not want to throw the time factor in quite yet until you've got a little bit more formed idea of what you want to work on. But later on, pull out a timer. We all have smartphones and watches and things like that. So you can find a way to get that minute in there and just kind of feel out how things are working. And that's where practicing comes in handy, because you might figure out you need to remove something or maybe change some things around to make it more succinct to fit into that 1 minute. That's where you can maybe come up with 3 or 4 ways to say it. Try it out one way. Oh, I didn't like taking that part out. I want to put that part back in. Oh, I took this part out. I need to put this other part in. Those types of things. Note cards work okay. We had students last year that used a note card to kind of keep them on track, make sure they hit all the high notes. Like I said, we haven't given you like 10 years to do it yet, so it's probably not all going to be in there yet, so that's fine. Can you repeat the question? Oh, sure. She wanted to know if a note card would be appropriate, would be allowed. Yes, because of course you haven't had a lot of time to develop these yet, so you don't have all of that information memorized at this point, so that's fine. Uh-oh.
This room has really bad acoustics. I know it's been a long day. It's going to be a long day every day. I'd really like to ask you, when we're in session and we have a presenter up here who's speaking, that we show them respect. I know it's very tempting. I've been doing it myself. It's very hard to hear the questions. We're recording the sessions for the 5 scholars who aren't here. So we want to get great sound. I know we all know
Do you need the microphone for this one? This question was about breakout sessions.
Yeah, so we'll put that question on hold as Caitlin comes up. Do we have any more questions about the elevator pitches before we break into that? Yeah. I wouldn't say necessarily pretending. I would say, what are your questions that you have, and what are, to do your best to sort of address those from a. And you probably won't. And so, I would say maybe take 5, 10, 20 minutes this week to look out there, do some Google searching, see, you don't need to know everything about what's out there, certainly, but a quick, search or a conversation with other researchers that are here can help you figure that out. You don't need to know everything about it. We're not judging you on the quantity of your knowledge or how much you know about it. But yeah, we want to have some sense of where you're coming from. So I would say don't pretend, but don't feel like you have to be completely thorough either. Just do your best to get a sense of what's out there. Does that help? Tori, anything to add?
No, I think that's a good way to think about it. I wouldn't say an imaginary thing you're never going to do, because then you won't have any enthusiasm behind whatever the question is that you put out there. So at least something that you're interested in. It might not be fully fleshed out, but if you've got some interest in it, go ahead, take the 10 or 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do a little bit of background research if you can, and then put together a decent question, and that'll sound a lot better than just any made-up question. Well, probably, I'm thinking we might try to do table by table. I'll figure out some kind of system. The last time we were able to just make one big circle and just start on one end and go to the other, we won't be able to do that this time. So it'll probably just go table to table. We've got a pretty fairly large space of time, gap of time to get all of the presentations in. So we'll get them in. Most likely, I'll figure out some kind of way to hand a stick or something to kind of keep things moving from place to place. This is on Friday. I don't have the schedule. I think it's 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Okay, 3:30 to 5:30. It is in your schedule of events.